Marcus Langford had everything a man could ever want: money, power, and a name that echoed through the business world. He built a tech empire from nothing, working day and night, sacrificing sleep, friendships, and even love. But no matter how many awards he won or how many luxury cars filled his garage, there was one thing he couldn't buy back: the love of Imani Reynolds. Years ago, when Marcus was just a young man with big dreams, Imani was his world. She was beautiful, smart, and full of life. She had a way of making everything feel brighter, like the world was full of endless possibilities. Marcus loved her deeply, but he was obsessed with success. He believed that love could wait, but opportunities wouldn't. Imani had always supported him. She stood by his side when he struggled to get investors, when his first business deal fell through, and when he barely had enough money to take her out for dinner. She never cared about riches. She cared about him. She wanted a future where they built something together, where love and ambition could exist side by side. But Marcus had a different plan. He became so focused on his company that he started missing important moments: date nights, birthdays, and even the little things, like calling just to say goodnight. At first, Imani was patient. She understood that building something great required time and sacrifice. But over the years, she realized that Marcus wasn't just building a business. He was building a life that didn't include her. One night, after another broken promise, she finally made her choice. She loved him, but she loved herself too. She wouldn't be an afterthought in the life of the man she gave her heart to. With tears in her eyes, she walked away, leaving Marcus standing in his office, too focused on closing the deal to realize that he was losing the most important person in his life. At first, Marcus thought she would come back. He told himself that once he reached success, he'd fix things. But success came, and Imani was gone. She didn't wait. She moved on, and by the time he realized his mistake, it was too late. Years passed, and Marcus became one of the richest men in the country. His face was on magazine covers, his name was listed on billion-dollar deals, and his phone never stopped ringing. But in the quiet moments, when the cameras were gone and the parties ended, he felt something missing. No matter how many people surrounded him, he felt alone. Then, one day, he heard her name again. A business associate mentioned an architect who was making waves in the industry, a woman leading major projects and mentoring young girls in STEM. The moment he saw her picture, his heart stopped. It was Imani. She was successful, she was thriving, and she didn't need him. For the first time in years, Marcus knew what he had to do. He had to win her back. But could he? Marcus couldn't stop thinking about Imani. It had been years since they last spoke, but seeing her name again brought back every memory. He remembered the way she used to smile at him, the way she believed in him when no one else did. She wasn't just another woman from his past. She was the only one who ever truly mattered. That night, Marcus sat alone in his penthouse, staring out at the city skyline. He had everything: wealth, power, influence, but none of it felt real without someone to share it with. And the truth was, he had spent years chasing success, thinking it would fill the emptiness inside him. But the more he achieved, the more he realized that no amount of money could replace what he lost. He had to see her. He had to know if there was still a chance. The next day, Marcus asked his assistant to find out more about Imani's work. Within hours, he had a full report in front of him. She had started her own architecture firm, worked on major projects, and even launched a mentorship program for young black women in STEM. She had built a life for herself. Without him. That thought stung more than he expected, but it also made him admire her even more. Marcus wasn't the type of man to sit back and wait. He was used to taking action, making things happen. So he found out where she would be speaking at an upcoming business conference. It was a panel discussion about women in leadership, and she was the keynote speaker. He booked a front row seat. When the day arrived, Marcus walked into the event, dressed in his finest tailored suit. He was confident in business, But for the first time in a long while, he felt nervous. What if she didn't want to see him? What if she had forgotten about him completely? The moment Imani stepped onto the stage, he felt his breath catch. She was even more beautiful than he remembered. Her confidence, her grace, everything about her was captivating. As she spoke about her journey, her struggles, and her success, he realized just how much she had grown. When the panel ended, he waited near the exit, hoping to catch her before she left. But as she walked toward him, laughing with a group of colleagues, he noticed something he wasn't prepared for. She wasn't alone. A man walked beside her, his hand resting gently on the small of her back. They looked comfortable together, like two people who belonged in each other's lives. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. Imani had moved on. For the first time, the reality hit him. He wasn't just fighting for a second chance. He was fighting against time. And time, it seemed, had already taken her away from him. Marcus stood frozen as he watched Imani laugh with the man beside her. He felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Regret, mixed with a sharp sting of jealousy. He had spent so much time thinking about winning her back, but he never stopped to consider one painful possibility. She had moved on. For a moment, he thought about walking away. Maybe it was too late. Maybe she had already found the happiness he couldn't give her years ago. But then she turned slightly, her eyes scanning the room, and that's when she saw him. Her smile faded, her laughter stopped, and for a brief second, time seemed to pause. Marcus saw the surprise in her eyes, maybe even a flicker of something else. Confusion, curiosity, or was he just imagining it? Before he could say anything, the man beside her touched her arm gently, bringing her attention back. Marcus watched as she nodded and said something to the man before excusing herself. Then, to his surprise, she started walking toward him. Marcus. Her voice was calm, measured, but he could hear the tension underneath. He forced a smile. Hey, Imani. She studied him for a moment, as if trying to decide whether this was real or some strange trick. What are you doing here? I heard you were speaking today, he admitted. I wanted to see you. Imani raised an eyebrow. After all these years, Marcus exhaled, running a hand over his jaw. He had prepared for this moment in his head, but now that she was standing in front of him, every planned word felt useless. I know it's been a long time, but Marcus, she interrupted, her tone firm but not unkind. It has been a long time. She glanced back at the man waiting for her. Things have changed. Marcus swallowed hard. He knew what she meant. She had a life now, one that didn't include him. But he wasn't ready to give up that easily. Can we talk? He asked. Just for a few minutes. Imani hesitated. He could tell she was debating whether it was worth it. But then she nodded. 5 minutes. They stepped aside, away from the crowd. Marcus took a deep breath. You look amazing, Imani. I'm really proud of everything you've built. Thank you, she said, crossing her arms. But I don't understand why you're here. What do you want, Marcus? He met her gaze, no more hesitation. You. Imani inhaled sharply, caught off guard. I know I messed up, he continued. I made the wrong choice. I thought success would make me happy, but all it did was show me what I lost. Imani, I never stopped thinking about you. She looked at him for a long time, her expression unreadable. Then she let out a small sigh. Marcus, I'm engaged. His heart dropped. It wasn't just that she had moved on. Marcus felt like the air had been knocked out of his lungs. Engaged. He had expected Imani to move on, but hearing it out loud made it real in a way he wasn't ready for. He searched her face, hoping to find out. Hesitation. Anything that would tell him she wasn't sure about this. But Imani's expression was steady. Still, he couldn't walk away. Not yet. How long? He asked, his voice quieter than before. 2 years, she said, watching him carefully. 2 years. That meant she had been with this man for a while, long before Marcus even realized he wanted her back. The weight of his mistakes pressed against him. If he had come back sooner, would things have been different? "You love him?" he asked before he could stop himself. Imani frowned, clearly uncomfortable with the question. "Marcus, I just need to know," he said, his voice sincere. "If you tell me you love him, that you're happy, I'll leave you alone." Imani sighed, glancing toward the man waiting for her at a distance. "David is a good man," she said. "He's kind, patient, and he shows up. He's steady in a way that I never had before." Marcus felt those words like a punch to the gut. He knew what she meant. She wasn't just talking about David. She was talking about him, about the way he had let her down. "I'm happy, Marcus," she said, though there was something in her eyes that made him wonder if she was saying it for his benefit or her own. He nodded slowly, forcing himself to stay calm. "That's all I ever wanted for you." She gave him a small smile, one that carried a hint of sadness. "Then we don't have anything left to say." Imani turned to leave, and for a moment, Marcus considered letting her go. Maybe this was it. Maybe he had lost his chance forever. But then he thought about all the years they had spent apart, all the things left unsaid. If he walked away now, he would regret it for the rest of his life. "Imani, wait." She stopped but didn't turn around. "I know you're engaged," he said, taking a step closer. "I know I hurt you before. But don't tell me you never think about what we had. Don't tell me you never wonder what could have been." Slowly, she turned to face him again, her expression unreadable. "I don't expect you to drop everything for me," he continued. "But I do want one chance, just one, to show you that I'm not the same man I was back then." Imani let out a slow breath. "Marcus, you can't just show up after all these years and expect me to forget everything." "I don't want you to forget," he said. "I just want you to see for yourself who I am now." She hesitated, then glanced at David, who was still waiting for her. Finally, she shook her head. "I can't do this." Then, without another word, she walked away. Marcus stood there, watching her leave, but he knew one thing for sure. Marcus sat in his car, gripping the steering wheel, his mind racing. Imani had walked away from him, but he couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't completely sure about her decision. There was something in her eyes, something unspoken. She might have said she was happy, but was she truly? Or was she just convincing herself that she had made the right choice? He wasn't going to give up. Marcus had spent years making business deals, negotiating with some of the toughest people in the world. He knew when a door was fully closed, and he knew when there was still a chance to push it open. He just had to find the right way. The next day, he made his first move. Through his connections, he found out that Imani was working on a major community project, designing a new youth center in the city. It was a passion project for her, something she had been fighting to bring to life for years. He saw an opportunity to prove that he wasn't the same man who once walked away from her dreams. Instead of sending her flowers or leaving her messages, Marcus did something different. He made a large donation to the youth center under her name, ensuring that her vision had the funding it needed to be completed. He didn't attach his own name to it. He didn't ask for anything in return. He just wanted to help her succeed, whether she gave him another chance or not. A few days later, Imani found out. She called him, her voice filled with frustration. "Marcus, what did you do?" He smirked slightly, leaning back in his chair. "I helped." "You donated millions to my project," she said. "Why?" "Because I believe in you," he said simply. "I always have." There was silence on the other end. Then she sighed. "Marcus, you can't just throw money at something and expect it to fix the past." "I know that," he admitted. "But this isn't about fixing the past. It's about showing you who I am now. I don't just want to be the man who left you behind. I want to be the man who stands beside you." Another pause. He could hear her breathing, hear the hesitation in her voice. "Marcus, I'm engaged." "I know it," he said, his voice calm. "I'm not asking you to leave him. I'm just asking you to see me, to really see me." Imani didn't respond right away. He could tell she was struggling, torn between the life she had built and the past that refused to stay buried. Finally, she spoke. "I don't know if that's a good idea." "Just one conversation," he said. "One dinner. If you walk away after that, I promise I won't bother you again." There was a long pause. Then, to his surprise, she whispered, "Okay." It was just one dinner. But Marcus knew one night could change everything. The restaurant was quiet, elegant, the kind of place where people spoke in hushed voices and soft music played in the background. Marcus had chosen it carefully, not too romantic, but still intimate enough for a real conversation. He wasn't here to impress Imani with wealth. He was here to remind her of what they once had, and what they could still have. When she walked in, he felt his breath catch. She was stunning, as always, but tonight there was something different about her. Maybe it was the way she carried herself, or maybe it was the fact that she was sitting across from him again after all these years. "I still don't know why I agreed to this," Imani said as she settled into her seat. Marcus smiled slightly. "Because you're curious." She sighed, shaking her head. "This isn't fair, Marcus." "What isn't?" "You showing up now. You saying all the things I wanted to hear years ago." She looked down at the menu, but he could tell her mind was elsewhere. "I've moved on. My life is different now." "I know," he said gently. "I'm not here to ruin your life, Imani. I just need you to be honest with me." She met his eyes, and for a moment, he saw a flicker of something. Hesitation, doubt. "Are you truly happy?" he asked. Imani took a deep breath, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. "David is a good man," she said softly. "That's not what I asked." She looked away. "Marcus, just tell me the truth," he urged. "If you tell me you love him, that he's everything you want, I'll let you go. I'll walk away for good." She opened her mouth as if to answer, but no words came out. Instead, she pressed her lips together, frustration flashing in her eyes. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I lost you once," he said, his voice low. "And I can't live with the regret of not trying." Imani let out a slow breath. "You think one dinner can change everything?" "No," Marcus admitted. "But I think we can change everything, if you let yourself see what's still here." She stared at him for a long time, and in that moment, he saw the conflict in her eyes. The past and the present were colliding inside her, and she didn't know which one to hold on to. Finally, she shook her head and whispered, "I need time." Marcus leaned back, relief washing over him. She wasn't saying no. "That's all I'm asking for it," he said. As they finished their dinner, there was no clear answer, no grand decision. But Marcus knew one thing for sure. He still had a chance, and he wasn't going to waste it. Over the next few days, Imani found herself lost in thought. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't ignore the emotions Marcus had stirred in her. Seeing him again had reminded her of things she had buried deep, old feelings, unfinished conversations, and the love she once thought would last forever. But she was engaged to David, a man who had never hurt her, never made her question his love. He was stable, kind, and always there when she needed him. She should feel safe with him. She did feel safe. So why couldn't she stop thinking about Marcus? One evening, Imani sat alone in her apartment, staring at her engagement ring. David had noticed her distance lately. He had asked her if something was wrong, and she had told him she was just stressed with work. But deep down, she knew the truth. She was torn. Before she could think too much, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Marcus. "Marcus, I know I promised to give you time, but there's something I want to show you. No pressure. Just meet me tomorrow evening. If you don't, I'll respect your choice." Imani sighed, running a hand through her hair. She shouldn't go. She knew she shouldn't. But the next evening, she found herself standing outside a quiet park, waiting. Marcus arrived a few minutes later, dressed casually, a rare sight for a man always in suits. He smiled when he saw her, but there was something different in his eyes, something softer, more vulnerable. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he admitted. "I wasn't sure either," she replied. "So, what is this?" Marcus led her toward a small pavilion, where a group of kids were playing basketball. Some were laughing. Others were focused, but all of them looked happy. "This is the youth center you've been working so hard for," he said. Imani's eyes widened. "It's open already." "Not officially," Marcus said. "But I pulled a few strings to get it started early. I wanted you to see what you've built, what we built." Imani watched as the kids played, her heart swelling with pride. This was her dream, her passion. And now, it was real. She turned to Marcus. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because I need you to know that I'm not just here for you," he said. "I'm here for your dreams, your goals, everything that matters to you. I messed up before, Imani. But I won't make that mistake again." Imani looked at him, her heart pounding. For the first time, she saw not just the man from her past, but the man he had become. And for the first time, she didn't know what to do. As the evening breeze surrounded them, Marcus spoke again, his voice gentle. "I'm not asking you to make a decision now," he said, "but I need you to ask yourself, who do you really want to spend your life with?" Imani swallowed hard, emotions swirling inside her. Imani sat alone in her apartment, staring at her engagement ring. The weight of her decision pressed on her heart like never before. She had spent years building a life with David, and he had always been good to her. There were no lies, no heartbreak, just consistency and love. But then Marcus had come back, and suddenly she found herself questioning everything. She had seen the youth center, seen the way Marcus had changed, and felt emotions she thought she had buried long ago. He wasn't just saying the right things, he was showing her that he had grown, that he was ready to be the man she had once needed him to be. But was that enough? The next day, David noticed her silence. He sat beside her on the couch, concern in his eyes. "Imani, I know something's wrong," he said gently. "Is it about Marcus?" She inhaled sharply. He had always been able to read her. "I don't know," she admitted. "I thought I had moved on. I thought I was happy." David's face remained calm, but she saw the flicker of pain in his eyes. "But now you're not sure." Imani nodded slowly. For a moment, there was only silence. Then David sighed, looking down. "I love you, Imani. I always have. But I don't want to be with someone who isn't sure about me." Tears welled in her eyes. "I never wanted to hurt you." "I know," he said softly. "But I think you already know where your heart is." Imani swallowed hard. She didn't want to say it out loud, but deep inside, she did know. That night, she found herself standing outside Marcus's penthouse. He opened the door, surprised but hopeful when he saw her. "Imani." She took a deep breath. "I've spent days thinking about this, about us." She met his gaze, steady and sure. "And I can't ignore my heart anymore." Marcus stepped closer. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I choose you," she whispered. "I never stopped loving you, Marcus. And I don't want to live my life wondering what if." Relief and joy filled his eyes as he pulled her into his arms. "You don't know how long I've waited to hear that." She smiled against his chest, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. This time, they weren't just two people lost in the past.